Because I said so. Man, I must have heard that phrase a million times as a kid. That was my mom's go-to phrase for just about any and every question I asked. Why do I have to make my bed when I'm just going to sleep in it later again anyway? Because I said so. Why do I have to have a curfew? If I'm at my friend's house, I can sit there the same as I can here. Because I said so. Why do I have to eat all my vegetables before I get dessert? You guessed it, because I said so. How come you don't have to give me a good explanation for why I do things instead of just always saying because I said so? Because I'm your mother, and I said so. Man, that was infuriating. And while that might not be the best parenting technique, she was right. She was my mom, and because I was living under her roof, another great phrase both my parents liked to employ, she could tell me what to do, and she had every right to expect it to be done, whether I liked the explanation or not. I have to admit, I've often wondered how our lives would be different, and how much easier life might be if we simply took God at His word and submitted to His authority. If we simply took what God tells us to do and His because I said so would be enough for us to do it. Paul tells us in this chapter of Romans that God has that because I said so right. Even though God gives us great explanations in Scripture, the reality is that oftentimes we question why God asks us to do certain things or not do other things. Maybe you question why God has you where He does, or why He hasn't opened that door you prayed to open, or He closed the one that you thought for sure you were supposed to go through. Whatever season of life you're in right now, I want you to remember that you were created by God. Specifically, the way you are and placed in this specific time with this specific generation for His purpose. While God certainly is not afraid of our questions or unwilling to hear them, it doesn't change the fact that He made us and He can do with us whatever He thinks is best. The reality is, though, as a kid, I could have still disobeyed my mom and my dad if I wanted to, just because they said, because I said so. That phrase didn't put a magical spell on me that made me do whatever they want. The reality is, whether I would admit it at the time or not, I mainly obeyed and complied for two reasons. One, I feared what would happen if I didn't. And two, I trusted them. I trusted that their judgment was better than mine. Well, the same is true for us today in regards to God. The reality is that even though God could actually make us obey if He wanted to, He gives us free will, which allows us to choose for ourselves. However, I choose to obey God in many ways for the same two reasons. One, I fear what will happen if I don't. I'm afraid of what my life would look like if I started being in charge instead of God. And I have a healthy fear of who God is and what He's done. And two, I trust God. I trust His judgment more than my own. And I trust that His judgment and His ways are better than mine. In the end, God's way is always the best way for all of us. He knows what's best for all of us in all things because He's the creator of all of us and all those things. He is worthy of our trust, not just because He said so.